Shadow Hack. Chapter 751, Fulfilling a Desire. Yuan Biao couldn't understand the reason behind Li Yunmu's actions. He definitely wasn't Li Ying, so why was he insisting on being Li Ying and marrying the woman in front of them? And that woman was surprisingly even calling her, Yuan Biao, elder sister, which threw her heart in chaos. What the hell was going on there? While Ling Yuan was resting her head on Li Yunmu's chest with tears of happiness filling her eyes, Li Yunmu used voice transmission to secretly communicate with Yuan Biao. Don't tell me you want me to make another enemy? You know that I killed Li Ying, so do you want me to tell this cruel truth to your sister? Yuan Biao suddenly felt suffocated, since Li Yunmu's words were correct. The woman before her had waited for a man for 1,000 years, so if he died, her heart would be crushed. Li Yunmu was kind not to do that to her, but was it necessary for him to show his kindness to that extent? Then what's the need for you to marry her? Li Yunmu indifferently said. She is your sister, so just let her most cherished wish be fulfilled. It could also be considered as a compensation for me killing Li Ying. What kind of compensation is this? It is clearly a scheme conceived by you to fulfill your perverted desires. Humph. Biao, you must learn to be patient, Li Yunmu said with seriousness. Otherwise, if you went with me to Scandinavia, you wouldn't be able to endure it. You. What did you say? You also have women in Scandinavia, you. You cheater. Yuan Biao was itching to settle her grudge with Li Yunmu, but he grabbed her hand and calmly said, "All right, don't be noisy." Yuan Biao snorted, but she saw that Ling Yuan was watching her with large eyes. Elder sister, do you mind if I and Li Ying get married? Yuan Biao crossed her hands across her chest and coldly said, "Do as you wish." Good, since elder sister agrees, I am relieved. Otherwise, I would still feel somewhat restless in my heart. After all, elder sister and Li Ying got married first and I don't want to intrude forcefully. But I really love Li Ying and hope to acquire the support of elder sister. I won't mind other women as long as I can accompany him from now on. What? Younger sister, don't tell me you intend to share your man with others. Yuan Biao was truly unable to understand Ling Yuan's way of thinking. Having 3 wives and 4 concubines is common for a man, Ling Yuan said with a smile. I only want to accompany him, since I truly love him. Doesn't elder sister love him the same way as I do? Yuan Biao was somewhat dumbfounded all of a sudden. What sort of preposterous thoughts did Ling Yuan have? Was that really all right? She waved her hand and said, "You both quickly get married. We will immediately leave the devil world so that we don't get corrupted by the demonic qi." After that, Ling Yuan excitedly pulled Li Yunmu's hands and dragged him in front of the world tree. Li Ying, we made an oath here previously, so now we will fulfill it. Both of them knelt under the world tree, and using it as a witness, they bowed and said their vows. With that, the marriage could be considered as fulfilled. Although there was no one to give them blessings in the surroundings, Ling Yuan felt extremely happy. Even without anyone giving them blessings, as long as she was together with the person she loved, she would be fully content. In the meantime, Yuan Biao felt quite depressed. She was unable to digest the words spoken by Ling Yuan. Was it really normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? When she married Li Yunmu, she felt that he was an extremely warm person. It showed up that he was like that towards everyone, so shouldn't she feel a sense of crisis? But Ling Yuan's words were also vivid in her mind. If you truly love him, then it doesn't matter how many women are by his side. As long as you and him are together, you should be completely satisfied. No wonder Ling Yuan didn't have much hostility toward her. She didn't care about anyone else and only wanted to be together with her beloved. But Ling Yuan didn't know that Li Yunmu wasn't Li Ying. It was the most regretful matter for Yuan Biao. After Ling Yuan and Li Yunmu's wedding was finished, they prepared to leave the devil world. We should now return to the primordial god world. H.A.C.K and Nuwa shouldn't continue making things difficult for us. Li Yunmu shook his head. Forget it. I don't want to return to the primordial god world, that place makes me really sad. I will return to Scandinavia. Are you willing to come with me? Yuan Biao was slightly startled, but she understood Li Yunmu's feelings very well. She also didn't know how to face H.A.C.K and Nuwa. Alright, then we will do as you want. Ling Yuan also chimed in. Where my lord will go, I will follow. Yuan Biao saw Ling Yuan's excited appearance, and it was somewhat similar to how she felt when Li Yunmu and her had married. For the person whom she loved, she would have been happy to go to the end of the world. They searched the surroundings of Flowing Moon City of a way to leave the devil world, but found nothing. Then, Yuan Biao said, I recall that I fell down from above the Flowing Moon City. There is certainly a path to the devil god well there. Li Yunmu nodded, then began to search above Flowing Moon City. When they entered Flowing Moon City, the city suddenly became especially lively. The streets weren't lifeless anymore, but bustling with noise and excitement. Apparently, the passage of time in Flowing Moon City was faster compared to other places. Many people were constantly shouting selling treasures. Selling treasures. When Yuan Biao saw it, she was somewhat dazzled. The liveliness there was similar to the ocean market of the primordial god world because many strange objects were sold together with many ancient god-level artifacts. But the ocean market required proof to enter, and ordinary people were unable to sell or purchase treasures there. Li Yunmu glanced at the vendor stalls who were all calling out to him. Young master, come and see, I have all sorts of treasures here. Do you want anything? Li Yunmu shook his head. Not really. Ling Yuan suddenly looked at a pair of golden Qilin and said while looking at them fondly, how much would you sell this pair of golden Qilin for? Hee, young miss, you really have a good eye. This pair of golden Qilin is the most precious treasure in my stall. It represents a special meaning, which implies that love will find a way. Ling Yuan picked the pair of golden Qilin and said with a smile, I want them. Chapter 752, Treasure Auction. Aya. Young miss, you really are a noble customer. I had no customers since the start of the day, so you are my first visitor. At that moment, Yuan Biao and Li Yunmu looked over. Suddenly a piece of red cloth appeared in Ling Yuan's hand, which she handed to the small vendor. This is your reward. Magic silk. Aya, this is a really good treasure. You do know your stuff. If the meaning behind your golden Qilin wasn't pretty good, I wouldn't have given the magic silk to you. Ling Yuan said calmly. Hee, young miss, since you have been sincere and so magnanimous, then this lowly one wouldn't conceal it from you and incidentally provide you some valuable information. Information. Yuan Biao and Li Yunmu looked at each other. Flowing Moon City was really complex. If there was really some valuable information, then it was exactly what they had been looking for. Maybe the primordial god world and devil world had some close relation. The small vendor laughed mischievously and said, Young miss, today there's a treasure auction in Flowing Moon City. I see that you three seem to have a noble upbringing. It would be better if you all tried your luck there. Some exotic treasure or beast might catch your eye and you'll make a great profit. Ling Yuan nodded. We will go. Many thanks for telling us about it. This young miss is too polite. You have been so generous, so this can only be considered as a present from me. Then where should we go? To the auction house? Li Yunmu asked. Hee, this younger brother. As long as you have a treasure, you can definitely enter the auction. Li Yunmu nodded and said, Many thanks to you for telling that. Young brother, you are very polite. Ling Yuan suddenly smiled. Let's go, Li Ying. Flowing Moon City isn't lacking in treasures even when compared to the primordial god world. Li Yunmu nodded. Let's go and broaden our horizons. But I don't have any treasure on myself, so how will we enter the treasure auction? Ling Yuan smiled. Aren't I an elder sister considered as one? We are ancient secret methods, so many people will want to obtain us, who are considered as unreachable existences. Yuan Biao looked over at her with indignation. You both shouldn't have any ideas about ancient secret methods. Do you actually intend to auction us? We are priceless treasures. Ling Yuan smiled. Who said we will auction ourselves? It is only the proof to enter the auction. Ling Yuan handed one of the golden Qilin to Li Yunmu and said with a smile, Here, this is for you. That boss said that they imply that love will always find a way. It's for you, so we can be together eternally. Li Yunmu smiled and shook his head while looking at the golden Qilin. Truly a fool, he mused to himself. Clearly that vendor fooled her, and perhaps even she knows it. But she had to purchase it because this treasure resembles something, and given her temperament, she had no other choice. Li Yunmu took the golden Qilin and said, Seems like they don't use money to conduct business here but barter instead. Ling Yuan nodded. This is the rule of the entire devil world. Yuan Biao curled her lips. The rules here are quite similar to those of the primordial god world. The ocean market of the primordial god world is the same. To exchange for a treasure you need another treasure, and each person gets what they want. Soon, they reached the treasure auction, which the small vendor had spoken about, under the guidance of Ling Yuan. However, it was completely deserted without even the shadow of a living being. It seemed like there weren't many treasures which could catch the eye of people in the auction. Ling Yuan led Yuan Biao and Li Yunmu to the entrance. It was guarded by a big rat which held a jade scepter in its hand. Right then, someone before them was undergoing the inspection. Ha ha ha, do you understand the rules of this auction? What about treasures? Get lost if you don't have any treasures, the large rat cursed savagely. The person it was talking to had hair like snow and was adorned in a white gown. He seemed to be an old man, but his face was very young, which astonished Li Yunmu. At that moment, an object suddenly appeared in the hands of the silent person in the white gown. The large rat glanced at the treasure and could not believe its eyes. Oh! Unexpectedly its heaven-flipping seal. Youngster, your luck is pretty good that you could obtain such an ancient treasure. Quickly go in. The youngster glanced at the large rat, then suddenly shot a glance at Li Yunmu's group behind him before entering the auction. Li Yunmu was also like a beggar in the eyes of the large rat. It sized him up and sneered at him. Hello. This is Flowing Moon City's auction, and even a mortal like you dares to enter here? You are courting death. Do you have something like a treasure on yourself? Don't you know the regulations of this auction? Wasn't that young master from just a moment ago also a mortal? Why could he enter and I can't? Li Yunmu said calmly. Youngster, he took out heaven-flipping seal. What do you have? Humph. Even mortals can enter here as long as they can take out a treasure. Such people are our noble visitors, do you understand that, mortal? The large rat shouted loudly. It irritated Li Yunmu, and he suddenly lifted the large rat. I warned you, it would be better if you were a little more polite. If you provoke me, I will turn you into a ball of meat. Li Yunmu viciously said to the large rat. It shuddered from fear and promptly said, You, have you come to create trouble? I understand the rules, but if I take it out then I fear that your rat eyes will go blind. After Li Yunmu finished speaking, 2 ancient secret methods appeared from his chest. The sight left the large rat completely dumbstruck. A mortal had taken out the 2 most unique treasures of the ancient lands, so how could it not be stunned speechless? It promptly changed its attitude and said to Li Yunmu, This lowly one was blind as a bat and didn't recognize your noble self. I request you to enter. Cold sweat poured down the forehead of the large rat. The Li Yunmu before it could obtain the 2 ancient secret methods, so it was clear that he was no pushover. Ancient secret method was something that many people yearned for in their dreams, but something that was rare among rare things. The large rat knew that someone could only obtain the ancient secret method of the primordial god world if they were close to Fuxi and Nuwa, otherwise, it was impossible. Chapter 753, Exchanging Chips. The second book was obtained from the master of the devil world Li Ying. If Li Yunmu hadn't defeated Li Ying, then how could he have obtained the ancient secret method? When the large rat thought of that, its body got drenched in sweat from head to toe. Who could have thought that such an extremely important mortal would arrive in their trifling flowing moon city? His influence certainly wasn't minor. After Li Yunmu passed the gate, a poorly dressed person came after him. A beggar also dares to behave atrociously in our place? Quickly scram, the large rat shouted out with spit flying everywhere. The poorly dressed person sneered at it. That young master who passed before me said that you are as blind as a bat, and you truly are as blind as a bat. This old crock hasn't come to Flowing Moon City for a very long time, and it seems like many people have already forgotten me. Damned beggar, no one has ever said that I was useless. Quickly take out your treasure or scram. The old man snorted coldly, then suddenly took out a treasure sword from behind him. It fluttered in the sky a few times and then suddenly fell down in front of the large rat whose legs went weak from fright. That demonic sword, how could the rat not recognize it? It was the slaughter god sword which had shocked the entire devil world. Since the sword appeared in the world once more, didn't that mean that the entire devil world was about to be thrown into chaos? The large rat shook like a leaf in the wind. Could something have happened in the devil world? Otherwise, why would the slaughter god sword would appear again? The old beggar snorted and took back the slaughter god sword before entering the auction. After Li Yunmu entered, he received his position and had to exchange chips based on the treasure he had taken out. But the two treasures in Li Yunmu's hand were priceless, which placed the people in the auction in a difficult position. At that moment, Ling Yuan suddenly smiled. I have some treasures here, is it possible for us to exchange for chips with them? Since we've come here, we don't want to leave empty-handed. After saying that, Ling Yuan took out some of her treasures, including Underworld Poison Register, 2 bottles of Blood Cloud, Blood Moon Seal, Heart Locking Stone, and so on. All of them dazzled Li Yunmu and Yuan Baiao. How could Ling Yuan have so many treasures? Moreover, all of them seemed extremely precious. Ling Yuan laughed, then whispered in Li Yunmu's ear softly. What do you think I was doing in the past 1,000 years? While hibernating in the World Tree, I used the World Tree's power to create some treasures. I've created all of them during the past 1,000 years. Li Yunmu nodded. All the so-called treasures before him were congealed and formed using energy and mental spirit. The older they were, the more powerful they became. When Ling Yuan took out so many treasures, the person changing them into chips was dumbfounded. He already had a headache from when Li Yunmu took out the ancient secret methods. Even after a lot of deliberation, he didn't know how to change them for chips, since both of them were priceless treasures. And moments later Ling Yuan took out lots of unappraised treasures. In the end, she obtained 10,000 chips, which was completely out of Li Yunmu and Yuan Baiao's expectations. Younger sister, you are too ferocious. I was shocked when you took out so many treasures. Ling Yuan happily took the large pile of chips and said with a smile, as long as they can be used to obtain the treasures which Li Ying likes, I am willing to take out all my treasures. Was that the appearance of a person who was in love? Ling Yuan was willing to give her everything for the person she loved. Previously, Yuan Baiao had also done the same, so when she saw Ling Yuan doing the same, she started to believe that they were really sisters. Moreover, her love for Li Yunmu surpassed even that of Yuan Baiao. But Yuan Baiao understood that the person Ling Yuan loved was Li Ying, who had been killed by Li Yunmu to save her. When Yuan Baiao thought of that, she felt that Ling Yuan was somewhat pitiful. She had loved the wrong person but was lucky to identify them wrong too. Just as Li Yunmu said, she didn't need to suffer. Seeing that she was being happy, Yuan Biao as an elder sister would naturally feel happy too. Ling Yuan was like a child, smiling without any care at Li Yunmei while sitting on the auction chair with eyes full of love. Lord husband, if something catches your eyes, you must tell me. I will definitely help you fight for it. Seeing Ling Yuan's adorable face, Li Yunmei couldn't help but pinch her nose and smile. All right. I won't be polite. Ling Yuan laughed slightly, then began to wait for the auction to begin. On the other side, Yuan Biao was somewhat nervous because she was feeling a cold chill on her back as if someone was watching them. She couldn't help but turn around and look, but everyone's gaze was on the platform and no one was watching where they sat. Strange. I obviously felt that someone was watching us from behind. Li Yunmei saw that Yuan Biao was somewhat uncomfortable and asked with concern, "What happened?" Biao. Yuan Biao shook her head before saying, "Nothing, just waiting for the auction to begin. Seems like I was just thinking too much. Noble guests, our auction will begin now. Everyone is getting impatient, right? We will now bring out our first treasure. This time's auction won't disappoint anyone. First treasure is an ancient divine beast." What? Ancient divine beast? Yuan Biao was quite shocked and couldn't help but mumble, "Our ocean market has a rule that beasts cannot be auctioned. Could it be that there are no rules in this flowing moon city? They even dare to auction ancient divine beasts? Aren't they afraid of problems?" Ancient divine beasts were somewhat dangerous and possessed incredible strength. They couldn't be controlled by others, so how did the auction have the ability to put them up for bidding? When the ancient divine beast appeared on stage, it was different from what everyone had imagined. It was very docile and sat on the stage without moving. What's going on here? Is that ancient divine beast dead? Everyone, don't be anxious. This ancient divine beast Nian won't injure anyone because we gave it the soul-breaking grass and it has lost its emotions and desires. Now, this ancient divine beast is like a sheep. Chapter 754, Devil Spirit Stone. This Nian eats the brains of dragons to survive, so you can understand how formidable it is. The base price is 1000 chips. Our soul-breaking grass will ensure that this divine beast will remain loyal and docile toward you. The auction master was a faintly green elf and looked extremely adorable. When he waved his hand, a medicinal herb wrapped up in a white cover of energy appeared in his grasp under everyone's gaze. The price of this soul-breaking grass is 500 chips. If you love your family, don't forget to buy this soul-breaking grass. Otherwise, this ancient divine beast won't be as docile. Yuan Biao's eyes went wide, and she muttered, "These people surprisingly even dare to sell an ancient divine beast in their auction. So is this Nian really that ferocious?" Li Yunmei asked calmly. Yuan Biao looked at him with large eyes. "Haven't you even heard of Nian, this ancient divine beast? It is even fiercer than a dragon. If it were not for auction master using that grass to keep it docile and submissive, everyone here would have been ripped apart by this beast." Li Yunmei was slightly startled. He hadn't expected that Nian was such a ferocious beast. "Give me some chips, I want to purchase this Nian," he said with a smile to Ling Yuan. "What? Did you eat something bad? You actually want to buy this Nian? That's just an ancient divine beast." Li Yunmei smiled. "I am not interested in that Nian, but the soul-breaking grass which can subdue an ancient divine beast. It seems like that soul-breaking grass is quite extraordinary, but if I purchase it directly, it will seem like I have another aim. Perhaps this auction master won't even sell it to me." Yuan Biao was speechless, but she could also understand Li Yunmei's reasoning. In truth, she was also somewhat interested in that soul-breaking grass. Li Yunmei raised his tile and said, "I bid 100 chips." The auction master heard Li Yunmei's bid and said with a smile, "This young master bid 100 chips. Does anyone want to bid higher than this young mater?" The people in the auction didn't continue to compete with Li Yunmei, which he found somewhat strange. Soon, he even heard the other bidders jeering at him. Idiot, just a youngster who doesn't know anything. Purchasing this neon is just a disaster, what's the use? He is just wasting soul-breaking grass. Ha ha ha, young people don't understand how high is heaven. Buying this neon at 1,100 chips will teach him a little lesson. There are still many treasures remaining. He shouldn't waste his chips on such garbage at the very start. Even after hearing the ridicule, Li Yunmu didn't think he was making a mistake, and soon the auction master said, "Congratulations, young master, you obtained the neon for 1,100 chips. Do you want the soul-breaking grass? If you want it, then the price will be 500 chips." Li Yunmu nodded and said, "Bring me the soul-breaking grass." The auction master smiled at him. This young master is truly extravagant. The ancient divine beast neon is yours. Together with a patch of soul-breaking grass, it will be 1,600 chips altogether. After the auction is over, you can change for the goods with your chips. At that moment, the neon suddenly moved, giving a fright to everyone in the auction. The auction master promptly placated them. "It's all right. Everyone needn't be so nervous. This neon is under the influence of soul-breaking grass, so this is just some ordinary movement. No need to be scared." Li Yunmu narrowed his eyes and said, "There really are some problems with soul-breaking grass." Yuan Biao frowned again, feeling a cold wind on her back filled with scathing killing intent. She promptly turned her head, but she didn't discover anything. However, she still felt a sense of restlessness in her heart. It was strange. She clearly felt someone looking at her, but why couldn't she find that person? Li Yunmu noticed the uneasiness in Yuan Biao's behavior and asked while smiling, "Biao, what happened? It seems like something is bothering you. I feel as if we are being watched by someone, but I can't explain that feeling," she quickly whispered in his ear. Li Yunmu was slightly startled, and he quickly used his perception power to search through the people in the auction. He would notice if some peculiarity appeared in anyone's breath. But even after searching with his perception power, he didn't discover anything suspicious. He relaxed then and said with a smile to Yuan Biao, "You're probably mistaken. They will now bring out the next treasure, so we should take a look at it." "All right." Yuan Biao nodded without any alternative and looked at the auction master, who brought out the next treasure. It was a piece of crystal stone, which was also extraordinary. This is a devil spirit stone. It is the dream treasure of all the residents of the devil world. The bidding starts at 5,000 chips. When the auction master said such a high price, Li Yunmu's complexion turned somewhat ugly. Ling Yuan had only exchanged for some 40,000 chips, but if the base price was 5,000 and everyone would fight over it, the price would definitely exceed 10,000. Li Yunmu felt that it wasn't worth it, but just as he thought to give up on the bidding, he saw Ling Yuan's eyes lit up with inner light. "Li Ying, quick! Compete in the auction. This stuff, you must get it, you cannot let it fall into the hands of others." Ling Yuan's excitement startled Li Yunmu, but she said that the object was very important, it had to be extraordinary. Without waiting for Li Yunmu to shout, the people in the surroundings began to raise the bid. 6,000 chips. 8,000 chips. 10,000 chips. Li Yunmu couldn't help but be amazed. What exactly was that thing? Lots of people were bidding for it, so it simply couldn't be anything ordinary. The eyes of the people bidding began to shine as if they had come in for that exact moment. But Li Yunmu felt strange that only the devils were betting like crazy on that object. The ordinary mortals as well as gods were completely unconcerned. What's the use of that devil spirit stone? Why are so many people crazily fighting for it? Ling Yuan was slightly astonished. "Li Ying, have you forgotten? The devil spirit stone controls the devil's strength. Whoever obtains it will become the new master of the devil world. Didn't you want to become the master of the devil world? You must obtain it." Li Yunmu was startled, but the only thought in his head was that he wasn't Li Ying. Was it necessary then for him to fight until death with those people? But before he could say that, Ling Yuan suddenly raised her hand. I bid 20,000 chips. Chapter 755, Excalibur. When Li Yunmu heard the price Ling Yuan shouted out, his eyes almost bulged out of their sockets. They didn't have many chips, so if Ling Yuan kept shooting her mouth off like that, their chips would run out soon. 20,000 chips. Isn't that quite high? When the people in the auction heard that price, they sighed and shook their heads in regret. 20,000 chips was clearly much more than they could take out. Like that, Ling Yuan, who had only 50,000 chips, squandered her hard-earned money for the Devil Spirit Stone. No one wants to raise it higher? Then this Devil Spirit Stone goes to this younger sister. Great! Li Ying, I helped you obtain the Devil Spirit Stone. I am very happy. Ling Yuan said with excitement. Li Yunmu awkwardly smiled at her. In truth, he didn't need any Devil Spirit Stone. He was going to leave the Devil World soon, and then he would no longer have any relation to it. But he was also very clear that Ling Yuan was completely in love with him and only wanted to help him in winning the auction. Although he knew that the person she loved was Li Ying, it didn't stop him from making use of it. The best case scenario would be if she mistook him for the wrong person for all eternity. At that moment, Yuan Biao felt a strong sense of being watched once more. What was happening? Who exactly was continuously watching them? She shuddered and said, I am still feeling that we are being watched by someone. Li Yunmu, what should we do? It doesn't matter. With me here, you don't need to worry. Li Yunmu's words put her mind to ease, and she relaxed a little. At that moment, the auction master spoke up with a slight smile once more. The next item will be the last item of today's auction. You mustn't miss this treasure, or even if you wait for all eternity, you might not be able to obtain it again. After he said that, a crystal cabinet appeared on the platform. There was a treasure sword within it, and it was flickering constantly. The sight of left all the people below the stage dumbstruck. With one glance, everyone could see that the sword was extraordinary. Its blade as well as the hilt were emitting a golden light, and although the sword was sealed within the crystal cabinet, its radiance could not be covered. Many bidders were extremely excited and stood up to take a look at the treasured sword. There was no hiding their greedy gazes. Yuan Baiao's eyes went wide. Excalibur. Impossible, how could Excalibur appear in the treasure auction of Flowing Moon City? This is impossible. When Li Yunmu saw Yuan Baiao being so nervous, he couldn't help but ask curiously, what happened? Why do you seem so excited? Is there a problem with the treasure? How can this treasure be here? It is the supreme divine sword of the primordial god world which vanished some years ago. Fuxi and Nuwa had investigated the matter, but there was no conclusion and we thought that it was sold in the ocean market. However, even after investigating the ocean market for many years, we still couldn't find any traces of Excalibur. I hadn't expected that this sword would surprisingly be sold here, in the Devil World. Repulsive, the people of Devil World are all thieves. Ling Yuan's complexion turned slightly ugly at her words and she said, older sister, you mustn't judge everyone in the Devil World with the same standard. I and Li Ying are also from the Devil World. Are you also cursing us? Yuan Biao sighed before saying, I am talking about the true devils, and you two aren't them. All right, we must bid for this divine sword because if falls into the hands of the devils, the primordial god world will be destroyed. Even if Yuan Biao had left the primordial god world for Li Yunmu, she was still a good person and cared about the primordial god world. She could not just watch and do nothing when harm may come to the primordial god world. Li Yunmu nodded. He could see from Yuan Biao's expression that the matter was quite important. At that moment, the auction master began to talk once more. This is Excalibur. I believe everyone is familiar with it, right? It is the treasure of the primordial god world. Our master went through untold hardships to obtain this treasure, so the base price is 10,000 chips. Hurry to bid if you like it. I bet 100,000 chips. Just when the auction master finished talking, the man which looked like a beggar sitting in the last row curled his lips into a strange smile and suddenly stood up. He immediately raised the price to 100,000 chips. Many people gazed at the stage and lamented their inadequacy. They only had 30,000 chips while the beggar bid 100,000 chips all of a sudden. It was likely that he had only come for the divine sword, but everyone was still suspicious whether he truly had 100,000 chips and wasn't deliberately misleading them. 100,000 chips, anyone wants to bid higher. Yuan Biao nervously looked at Li Yunmu. What should we do? We don't have that many chips, but if we don't bid, someone else will obtain the sword. Li Yunmu calmly stood up and said, I bet 150,000 chips. Yuan Biao opened her eyes wide. Where would they get so many chips? If they truly won and had to present the chips, where would they bring them out from? Li Yunmu knew Yuan Biao was somewhat suspicious and promptly explained himself. Since this divine sword is so important, we must first win the auction and then think about it. If we don't have enough chips, we would just have to take out another treasure to make up for it. This sort of thinking was truly crazy. But Yuan Biao still became very excited by Li Yunmu's actions. Everything they were doing was for the primordial god world. If they could bring Excalibur back, then maybe even the misunderstanding between Fuxi, Nuwa and Li Yunmu could be resolved. I am sorry. I didn't intend to stay in the primordial god world, but You don't need to explain yourself, Li Yunmu said calmly. You have your own reasons, but I will help you. Yuan Biao sensed a feeling of warmth in her chest. She knew that Li Yunmu was always doing such things to make her feel relieved. Anyone wants to bid higher than 150,000 chips. That beggar sitting in the last row coldly looked at Li Yunmu and said, I bid 200,000 chips. 200,000 chips. This divine sword has already reached 200,000 chips. Is there anyone who wants to go higher? Li Yunmu saw that the beggar was unwilling to give up and his voice filled the entire sky. 500,000 chips. What? The price reached 500,000 chips. Anyone wants to go higher? Yuan Biao supported her head with her hand, not knowing what exactly was Li Yunmu thinking. He said 500,000 chips. How would they collect such an exorbitant amount? Ling Yuan suspiciously looked at Li Yunmu. Why are you bidding 500,000 chips? We don't have that many chips. Li Yunmu smiled slightly. Don't panic. I will first make all competitors withdraw, then snatch it myself. Chapter 756, Devil Sword for Slaughtering Gods. The beggar gnashed his teeth. Normally, people didn't dare to casually fight him over the things he wanted. Since the other party chose to raise the price so high and he didn't have so many chips on him, he could only use another method. Under everyone's gaze, he didn't shout out another price but instead flew to the platform and reached his hand out to snatch the crystal cabinet. The auction master was forced to retreat a few steps and screamed out, "Guards, come! Someone is trying to steal in public, quickly come!" The next instant, the large rat rushed inside with some people. What's the matter? Who is creating a public disturbance? You should first get my, Jin Zhuang's, permission. Little bastard, this is the auction of Flowing Moon City. Are you courting death? The beggar smiled coldly. Today, I have come for this Excalibur. If can't purchase it, then I must steal it. Li Yunmu was startled by the beggar's words. Someone actually thought the same as me, he wondered to himself. Li Yunmu, Excalibur cannot fall into the hands of other people. Yuan Biao said nervously. Li Yunmu nodded and suddenly jumped onto the stage. This is a fair and impartial market, so there is no need to fight until the fish dies or the net splits. You won't come out of the auction house. If you wanted to obtain Excalibur, you should have gone through the regular channels. Humph, you are only a mortal. I was watching for you for a long time, and sure enough, you have come for Excalibur. Since this is the case, you mustn't blame this great immortal for being impolite. This great immortal. Li Yunmu sneered while the beggar suddenly took out a treasure sword. It was covered in dark energy and stayed suspended in the sky, watching over everyone. Yuan Biao glared at the beggar and yelled, "Devil sword for slaughtering gods." No wonder she had felt a slight chill on her back. He actually had the devil sword for slaughtering gods. When all was said and done, she had grown up in the primordial god world, so she naturally had cultivated the divine energy and could be considered as a god-level expert. The devil sword was created to murder gods, so Yuan Biao being able to feel its killing intent wasn't surprising in any way. These two swords should be perfect opposites of each other. Li Yunmu asked calmly. Yuan Biao nodded. The two swords exist to eliminate the gods and devils respectively. If they appear together, it will lead to a battle between the primordial god world and the devil world. At that time, the entire ancient lands will be thrown into chaos, which is what Fuxi and Nuwa never wanted to see. Since you already know that the sword in this great immortal's hands is devil sword for slaughtering gods, you should wait with your hands extended to be captured. This great immortal might still forgive you then. Li Yunmu coldly smiled at him. This person is truly unbridled. You forgot one thing though. I'm not a god. Ling Yuan suddenly stood up and snorted at the beggar. That's right. There's also me. Your god-slaughtering sword is ineffective toward me. Although she was the incarnation of the ancient secret method, she had cultivated devil energy and could be considered as a devil of the devil world. The god-slaughtering sword would not injure her. Instead of it, she was more terrified of the devil punishment sword in the cabinet. Capture them quickly for me, the large rat Jinzhuan shouted and rushed at the beggar. Who knew that the beggar with the god-slaughtering sword would not retreat but pull out a bottle gourd and shout loudly, "Gather!" Instantly, the large rat as well as other devils rushing toward him were collected by the bottle gourd. Yuan Biao focused on the man and said, "Who exactly are you? Why do you have the spirit-devouring bottle gourd?" Spirit-devouring bottle gourd? Li Yunmu asked with a frown. Spirit-devouring bottle gourd is a treasure of a hermit god from the ancient lands, and it is very domineering. If any mortal enters it, they will be reduced to a pool of blood. If a devil spirit enters it, they will vanish in a puff of smoke. So tyrannical? Li Yunmu retreated a few steps while Ling Yuan pulled the hem of his clothes, not daring to lift her head from nervousness. At this time, the beggar laughed loudly. Don't you know this great immortal's intelligence? Once I obtain Excalibur, I will be unrivaled in this world. When I will encounter a god, I will kill a god, and if I encounter a devil, I will kill a devil. Yuan Biao snorted at him. You smelly immortal, stop boasting here. Whether it is ordinary people or gods, they are only proficient in using one type of treasure. You have so many treasures on you, so how can you be proficient in using all of them? Yuan Biao's words woke Li Yunmu up, and he instantly rushed at Minghui. Only by defeating the beggar could he stop him from obtaining Excalibur. When Minghui saw Li Yunmu pouncing at him, he coldly shouted, "Courting death." A bag suddenly appeared in his hands, and it was the yin and yang bag. But Li Yunmu didn't give him any opportunity to use it. He was sure that Minghui would bring out another treasure to defend himself, but as a matter of fact, that wasn't anything different. If Li Yunmu attacked dominantly, he might be able to defeat the beggar just like that. The moment Minghui took out his treasure, Li Yunmu's lightning-fast offensive threw him to the ground. Minghui felt his body go out of his control, then the next moment he found himself under Li Yunmu's foot, unable to move even slightly. Despicable! Li Yunmu picked up the devil sword for slaughtering gods, then threw it at Ling Yuan and said, "This person is only so-so. Young hero, please let me go." Ming Hui began to beg for forgiveness the moment he experienced Li Yunmu's true ability. Why do you want to obtain Excalibur? What exactly is your aim? Tell me. Li Yunmu said coldly. I am under orders. Please spare me. I truly am only following orders. Ming Hui said. Who sent you? It was Priest Spirit Void. He said to use the God Slaughtering Sword to attract the Devil Punishing Sword. Priest Spirit Void. Li Yunmu frowned. He had never heard of the person, so he turned to Yuan Biao to ask her about him. Yuan Biao rushed forward at that moment, however, and picked Ming Hui up. What rubbish are you talking? How can you slander Priest Spirit Void so casually? I have seen him for a long time, and he has been subduing monsters and eliminating devils for who knows how long. He is a very righteous and moral person, the model of our primordial god world. In the face of death, you lowly wretch surprisingly dare to slander others. Young miss, please spare me. Forgive me. What I am saying is true. It was truly Priest Spirit Void who sent me. Chapter 757, Harmonious Swords. This Priest Spirit Void, what exactly is his aim? Li Yunmu asked again. Ming Hui gulped his saliva and mumbled, Priest Spirit Void said that as long as he can obtain Excalibur, he will become unrivaled in this world. Even the gods would have to fear him. I am only a person running errands, so please release me. I beg you. Then where did you take all those treasures from? Speak. Be truthful. If you don't speak, I will kill you. Only if you have your life can you make money, but if you lose your life, you won't be able to spend even what you've got now. Spare my life. Young hero, spare my life. I did everything you told me, right? You must release me. Seeing Ming Hui being sincere, Li Yunmu relaxed somewhat and agreed to let him go. For many years now, Priest Spirit Void has been killing monsters and punishing devils. He swallows their internal Dan and devil spirit to increase his cultivation. Although he stopped many monsters from causing harm to humans, he only killed them to obtain their internal Dan to increase his cultivation. These treasures were given to me by Priest Spirit Void. I don't know where he got so many of them from. He simply sent me to deal with the auction for him and gave me some treasures to exchange for chips. I truly don't know about other things. If you don't believe me, you can ask that great priest of the ancient lands yourself. It truly isn't related to me. This person should be speaking the truth, Li Yunmu said in a calm voice. It seems that this Priest Spirit Void isn't a good person. Since he wants to obtain Excalibur, he must have some hidden goals. Can you let me go now? Young hero, young miss. Quickly get lost. After Ming Hui left the auction house, no one remained inside and everyone quickly left. Excalibur in the crystal cabinet suddenly began to shine at that moment. It flickered a number of times before suddenly rushing out of the crystal cabinet and arriving in front of Li Yunmu. He was slightly startled and immediately said to Yuan Biao. This is Excalibur is recognizing his master. What? Before Li Yunmu could respond, his body seemed went out of his control, and he couldn't move even a single step. When the devil punishing sword arrived in front of Li Yunmu as well, it suddenly glowered brightly and chopped down as if wanting to punish a devil. In the moment of imminent peril, Ling Yuan lifted the god-slaughtering sword and clashed against the devil-punishing sword. Sparks flew out in all directions from the collision. The instant the devil-punishing sword and god-slaughtering sword clashed against each other, the whole auction house shook and crumbled. Li Yunmu regained his freedom of movement at that moment. He quickly left the area with Ling Yuan and Yuan Biao while all the treasures apart from the devil-punishing sword were left in the ruins. When the god-slaughtering sword and devil-punishing sword started to battle against each other in the sky, their sword spirits appeared. Lai Yang! You want to be my enemy? Han Bing! You shouldn't have taken this mortal as your master. Ridiculous, I am being robbed here. I saw that this mortal's aptitude was pretty good, so I thought about taking him as my master. That's why I wanted to conduct a test for him, so why are you getting excited? Humph, 1,000 years have gone by, and you are still the same. The two-sword spirit argued so much that Li Yunmu soon was unable to continue watching and said, if you want to keep bantering, we will leave first and won't be keeping you company here. When the swords heard that the person whom both of them wanted to take as their master was going to leave, they dropped down to block Li Yunmu's path. Do you know who we are? We are ancient sword spirits. We have been in existence for tens of thousands of years. Since you mortal have been chosen by us two brothers, that is your luck. You are brothers? Then why are you fighting? This matter doesn't concern you. You should know that if the devil punishing and God slaughtering sword recognize a master, that person will gain a substantial increase in strength. Many people yearn for it in their dreams, but you surprisingly aren't the least bit excited. Li Yunmu found the two sword spirits amusing. He felt like laughing loudly at them, but he didn't want to ruin the moment. Right then, the system awakened and began to release a stream of messages. Ding! Congratulations host, you have obtained Excalibur. Ding! Congratulations host, you have obtained Devil Sword. Ding! System experience points plus 100,000. Ding! Obtained space elements plus 100,000. Ding! Dimensional stones obtained plus 100. Ding! Skill comprehended, Harmonious swords. Before Li Yunmu could understand the application of the new skill, the system retreated into dormancy once more. Can the system not be used in the devil world? Alright, I don't have time to hear your quarrel. We will immediately leave the devil world. Hearing Li Yunmu's words, Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan nodded. Afterwards, they discovered a spell formation like a mechanism in the legendary tree of Flowing Moon City. Ling Yuan smiled. I know how to use this mechanism. She went to stand in front of the wall, then made some strokes above the spell formation, and it was quickly unleashed, which amazed Li Yunmu and Yuan Biao. When the spell opened, it looked like an exit. Li Yunmu then took a long look at the devil world and asked Ling Yuan, you really want to leave with us? We'll probably encounter even more trouble on the path, so aren't you afraid? Ling Yuan shook her head and said with a smile, as long as I can be together with you, Li Ying, I won't be afraid even if I have to go to the end of the world. Li Yunmu was moved by Ling Yuan's words. He then tightly gripped her hand and left through the exit. The three people passed through the spell formation and turned into a ray of light that rushed out of the devil god well back into the ancient lands. Yuan Biao chose to speak up then. The devil punishing sword has already recognized you as a master, but you can still return it to the primordial god world. But if not, you cannot let it fall into the hands of other people, otherwise, the primordial god world will be doomed. What do you think about explaining yourself to Fuxi and Nuwa? You're not a devil anymore. Li Yunmu looked at Ling Yuan and said, then what about her? She is a devil. Yuan Biao smiled bitterly. I really don't want Fuxi and Nuwa to keep misunderstanding you. Chapter 758, Warning. Li Yunmu hesitated for a moment. The threat posed by Fuxi and Nuwa was far larger compared to some priest spirit void. Thinking of that, he nodded and said, that's good. Then we will go and meet Fuxi and Nuwa. But I have to say one thing, I won't give the devil punishing sword to them. Yuan Biao nodded. I know. The devil punishing sword has already recognized a master, so they will not make things difficult for you. But what about Ling Yuan? She has the presence of a devil on her, which Fuxi and Nuwa will sense easily. Ling Yuan smiled and said, don't forget that I can change my attribute. So you don't need to be anxious about me. Yuan Biao and Li Yunmu were slightly startled by her words. Right after, she used some technique to remove the presence of a devil from her body without the least bit of it leaking out. The ancient secret method certainly had some abnormal abilities. While holding the hands of both ancient secret methods, Li Yunmu entered the primordial god world. The next moment, they noticed an enchantment around the primordial god world. It had appeared after it lost the protection of Yuan Biao. What happened here? Seems like Fuxi and Nuwa have been vigilant toward us for a long time. Since they are being like this, why do we need to bitterly struggle here? Let's go, since they are being heartless toward us, we don't need to loyal toward them. Ling Yuan looked suspiciously at Li Yunmu. While blinking, she asked naively, why aren't they willing to accept us? Don't they like us? Li Yunmu gently caressed Ling Yuan's hair and calmly laughed, there are many things in the world that are strange. You just have to get used to it. Ling Yuan nodded as if she understood it. Then, while still thinking about his words, she heard Yuan Biao shout loudly in the direction of the primordial god world. Emperor Fuxi, Empress Nuwa, Biao has come to meet you. I hope that for the sake of our past relationship of so many years, you can let us enter. Yuan Biao's words were effective, and the enchantment slowly opened. Fuxi and Nuwa are still willing to see us, quickly come, Li Yunmu, she said excitedly. She knew that Li Yunmu was the key. Only after making Fuxi and Nuwa believe in him would her heart relax. Fuxi and Nuwa looked at each other. They could not believe that the devil presence around Li Yunmu had actually dissipated. Didn't he fall to the devil path? Why doesn't he have the least bit of the presence of a devil? Yuan Biao promptly kneeled on the ground. Biao is guilty. I shouldn't have entered the devil god well and worried you both. Fuxi and Nuwa's gaze suddenly fell on Ling Yuan. She seemed to be somewhat similar to Yuan Biao. Could she also be a spirit of the ancient secret method? Fuxi and Nuwa's analysis was pretty good. But Ling Yuan was not just any spirit, she was the devil spirit. Her body had been invaded by the devil presence a long time ago, however, she could adjust the presence being emitted by her body. Fuxi and Nuwa looked at Li Yunmu and said, seems like we misunderstood you. Li Yunmu disdained to talk to them. Since the moment they wanted to get rid of him, he had understood their true nature. The two of them only cared about how to profit. Yuan Biao saw Li Yunmu's indifferent attitude and promptly said in his place. Emperor Fuxi, Empress Nuwa, Li Yunmu crossed through the devil world's boundary. Presently, there isn't the least bit of devil energy in his body, and he has also obtained the devil punishing sword. If he hadn't obtained it, I fear that it would have fallen into the hands of a villain. At that time, the heaven and earth would have suffered from great chaos. Fuxi and Nuwa were both shocked. Devil punishing sword was a protective treasure of the primordial god world, and Li Yunmu surprisingly returned with it. They had been trying to find the whereabouts of the devil punishing sword for several years, but they hadn't even seen any traces of it. Yuan Biao then promptly urged Li Yunmu, quickly take out the devil punishing sword and let Fuxi and Nuwa take a look. Li Yunmu was somewhat reluctant to take out the sword and calmly said, didn't you not trust me in the past? Even if I helped you find the devil punishing sword, you two will definitely not believe me again, isn't that right? There has indeed been many misunderstandings between you and me, Fuxi said. However, the matter of the devil punishing sword is too important. I request you to take out the sword and let me have a look. Li Yunmu commanded it with a thought, and the devil punishing sword flew out with a su sound. It emitted golden light from all over its body. If Li Yunmu had truly fallen to the devil path, then the devil punishing sword would not have let him go. Thus, not only did Fuxi and Nuwa could see the devil punishing sword, they also confirmed that Li Yunmu wasn't wallowing in the mire of the devil world. Is it possible to return this devil punishing sword to primordial god world? This is related to the existence of this world. Yuan Biao sighed at that. I fear that it is impossible. The devil punishing sword has already recognized a master. If we forcibly keep it in the primordial god world, it will cause a great calamity. What? Recognized a master? In the past thousands of years, devil punishing sword has never recognized a master, so how could it suddenly do that? Could it be? Fuxi and Nuwa looked at Li Yunmu with surprise. It seemed that he was quite extraordinary. Suddenly, another sword appeared behind Li Yunmu. It suddenly rushed forth as if it was out of control. Fuxi and Nuwa were startled by the sight of the god-slaughtering devil sword. They were more than familiar with it. Keep that god-slaughtering sword away. Fuxi, Nuwa, this is a warning for you. Li Yunmu said. If you two still want to live, you mustn't suspect me again. Otherwise, I definitely won't be polite toward you. Such a naked threat made Fuxi and Nuwa's complexion turn unsightly. But Li Yunmu's words were also correct. They should not have suspected him like that and waited until the matter was cleared before making a decision. It would have been the most rational approach. Li Yunmu put back the god-slaughtering sword and devil-punishing sword and said to Yuan Biao, we gave our respects to them, so we should leave now. You want to leave with the devil-punishing sword? Li Yunmu's gaze suddenly turned ruthless and he coldly said, else? What will you do then? Fuxi sighed at his words. You misunderstood my intention. If you leave with the devil-punishing sword, it will cause a calamity in the primordial god world. The prophecy is about to be fulfilled. It says that when the devil-punishing and god-slaughtering swords appear together, a war will begin between the gods and devils. Chapter 759, Threatening me? Li Yunmu coldly smiled and said, what are you thinking? Fuxi was silent for a moment before saying slowly, it would be better if you handed over this devil-punishing word to me for safekeeping. I won't let any mishaps happen to it. Dream on. Fuxi was extremely anxious, and Nuwa spoke up to raise a condition. Li Yunmu, there was indeed a misunderstanding between us previously, and as ancient gods, we will apologize to you. But would you not consider the matter of this devil-punishing sword again? The primordial god world is in imminent peril. That has no relation to me. If you are determined to take this devil-punishing sword with you, then you must agree to our condition. Nuwa said coldly while standing up. It was clear that if Li Yunmu didn't agree, they would never let him walk out of the primordial god world. If you want to leave the primordial god world, you have to agree to our condition. Nuwa's threat caused Li Yunmu to instantly go berserk. He picked up the god-slaughtering sword and placed it against Nuwa's neck, but Yuan Biao rushed over to his side to stop him. Don't! Li Yunmu, you mustn't act like that toward Empress Nuwa. While gnashing his teeth, Li Yunmu spoke slowly. The thing I dislike the most is people threatening me. If you want to threaten me and force me to agree to your condition, you can just drop dead. Even if I remain trapped in the primordial god world forever, I will never cower under your threats. Nuwa's complexion turned deathly pale, and Fuxi stepped forward to stop Li Yunmu. All right. Li Yunmu, you must calm down. We can't really do anything. Without the devil-punishing sword, how can we withstand the attack of the devils? How will we deal with Li Ying? Li Yunmu very much wanted to tell them that Li Ying had already been killed him, but Ling Yuan was by his side, so he couldn't open his mouth. Ling Yuan was slightly startled. How could Li Yunmu remain so calm when Fuxi and Nuwa mentioned Li Ying? Could it be that he had concealed his identity in front of Fuxi and Nuwa? No wonder then that he wanted to eliminate all the devil energy in his body. He had to have wanted to trick the ancient gods since the start. Li Yunmu snorted and put away the god-slaughtering sword before saying, then speak. What condition? Open the seal of the ancient lands. Only you can do so. Battle god Qilin and Flame Emperor Sheneng have battled the ancient divine beast for many years, but to no success. Then why are you so certain that I can defeat the Black Qilin and remove the seal? You possess the divine and the devil swords as well as boundless power. I believe that you can definitely remove the seal of the ancient lands. As long as you can undo it, our master god Pangu will awaken. Then we won't need to fear the devils. After hearing Fuxi's words, Li Yunmu hesitated for a moment, then took out the god-slaughtering sword and said coldly, take me to the seal." Fuxi and Nuwa broke out into smiles and led Li Yunmu to the forbidden zone of the primordial god world. That forbidden region was a hell of lava and contained the seal of the ancient lands. It was one of the seals of the origin world that could awaken the true god. However, it was guarded by ancient devil beasts and ancient divine beasts, so removing the seal was harder than reaching the sky. But Li Yunmu's arrival gave hope to Fuxi and Nuwa. Battle God and Flame Emperor's strength had already been exhausted, and all the power in their bodies had been drained, yet they were still unable to defeat the Black Qilin. Its eyes were full of killing intent. If it hadn't shown some mercy toward Battle God Xingtian and Flame Emperor Sheneng, they would have certainly died by then. "In any case, I would have to deal with the seals sooner or later," Li Yunmu said. At that moment, the system's voice echoed in his head. "Warn them to get away from here. This is the lava hell, and if they are the least bit careless, I fear that they will turn into a ball of smoke." Li Yunmu nodded and said to Fuxi and Nuwa, "You lead them out of here first. This place is very dangerous, so leave it up to me. If I don't come out for a long time, you can simply treat me as dead." Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan were somewhat concerned by his words. "You should be a little bit careful. Don't worry. You should follow Fuxi and Nuwa and leave first." When Li Yunmu saw everyone gradually leave the dangerous lava hell, he could engage in a fight without any worries. He slowly walked toward the center of the lava hell. Battle God Xingtian as well as Flame Emperor Sheneng had been brought out by Fuxi and Nuwa. Since they were unable to remove the seal, they would only waste their time by staying around. When Li Yunmu approached the center of the lava hell, he saw an ancient divine beast at the center. It was watching him like a tiger its prey. There was no mistaking its extreme hostility toward him. "Mortal! A mortal surprisingly dared to encroach on my territory," the Black Qilin said in a deep voice. Its whole body was covered in black energy. It did not seem like a divine beast as they said, but more like a devil beast. "I want to remove the seal of the ancient land. If you let me do so for the sake of God's slaughtering sword, I won't kill you." "Ha ha ha ha! Mortal, you are truly savage. This senior has been defending this place for many years and has forgotten the taste of mortals long ago. It would be better if this senior ate you, seeing how unbridled you are being in front of this senior." When Li Yunmu saw the Black Qilin suddenly open its bloody jaws, he narrowed his eyes slightly. The moment the Black Qilin made a move, the god slaughtering sword in his hand would definitely behead him. The Black Qilin seemed to have some reservations toward the god slaughtering sword in Li Yunmu's hand and didn't dare to casually approach him. "Everyone said you are an ancient divine beast, so why is your body emitting a devil presence?" Li Yunmu calmly said. "Humph, they haven't told you everything. Darkness is the representative of this senior. Although I might have some relation with the devils, this senior's lineage is much nobler than theirs, and this senior has already cultivated to become a divine beast and not a devil beast." Li Yunmu smiled and said, "Since you just confirmed whether you are a devil or a god, the sword in my hand won't let you off unless you surrender. Mortal, you have great courage. But in front of this senior, you are like an ant. This senior doesn't put you in his eyes. Did you see the battle god Xingtian and Flame Emperor Sheneng? Mortal, do you really think that you are more powerful than them?" Li Yunmu smiled. "Whether I'm more powerful or not, you will find out after we fight. You don't need to be hasty. But it seems that I can only offend you, Black Qilin. I am called Night God." Chapter 760, The Black Qilin. An indignant expression flashed through the Black Qilin's eyes, and it madly pounced on Li Yunmu. Even if Li Yunmu had the god-slaughtering sword in his hand, which might pose a hint of a threat, when all was said and done, it was not of much help. If the enemy possessed an ordinary devil bloodline, the god-slaughtering sword wouldn't be able to display its most formidable strength. The Black Qilin resisted Li Yunmu's god-slaughtering sword with sharp fangs. Black energy constantly spread past the god-slaughtering sword, and Li Yunmu was forced to retreat by a few steps. The Black Qilin's strength was far above that of Li Yunmu. If not for the devil-punishing and god-slaughtering swords, his wish to defeat the Black Qilin with his mortal body would have been no different from a pipe dream. Even H.A.C.K might not have absolute certainty in dealing with battle god S.H.A.D.W, whom the Black Qilin had defeated without giving any opportunity to retaliate. Upon coming, Li Yunmu had underestimated the enemy. He took a deep breath to calm himself, or else he would get defeated by the Black Qilin at any moment. Wouldn't it be better to use the dark state then? You want to use the dark state here? You are simply courting death. If you fell into the lava hell after losing reason, what could I do? Even if you want to die, don't drag me down as well. The system's words startled Li Yunmu. He couldn't help but think again about using the power of the dark state. Although Ling Yuan had concealed his devil energy inside his body, it hadn't transformed. The dark state and devil transformation were two different things. Although Li Yunmu would lose consciousness after using the dark state, his power would be raised 10 times. After transforming into a devil, his power would only increase slightly, but he would retain his consciousness. The only downside was that his good side would weaken while his evil side would become stronger. If he used the dark state after turning into a devil, his power would be amplified 10 times and he would retain his mind. After Li Yunmu thought of that, the corners of his mouth lifted up, and he began to unleash the devil energy in his body. But what left him bewildered was that devil energy in his body seemed to have been sealed. Unexpectedly he was unable to move it. Could it be that the system was playing tricks on him? You still want to use the devil energy? If you continue using it, this old man will disappear forever. The system's words startled Li Yunmu once more. No wonder he was unable to find any traces of the system when they were in the devil world. It was actually suppressed by the devil energy. Fortunately though, Ling Yuan had promptly suppressed his devil energy. When the system got the opportunity, it completely sealed the devil energy in Li Yunmu's body. Li Yunmu frowned once he learned about it. Then how should I deal with the Black Qilin? It possesses extraordinary strength. Even S.H.A.D.W was defeated by it, so how could I be its opponent? Even if your strength isn't amplified, that isn't everything. Don't tell me you forgot about the skill you had recently grasped, the system asked in complete calmness. Li Yunmu suddenly remembered that he had indeed obtained a new skill. However, he hadn't thought about it since the system's notification. He had never had the time to thoroughly research its power. Skill: Harmonious Swords. Grade: SSS. Effects: when the god-slaughtering and devil-punishing swords fuse harmoniously, they will display extraterrestrial power which can punish devil and slaughter god. Pay attention, operating it is extremely difficult. The user is required to possess extremely formidable faith. Li Yunmu rolled his eyes repeatedly. All that was written in the description was tantamount to saying nothing. But the system had already pointed out to him that it was the only method to defeat the Black Qilin, so he was pretty sure that it would be fine. Now do you think that this senior is formidable? Accept your death, mortal, the Black Qilin said with a sneer. Li Yunmu smiled. I have already found a method to defeat you. Open your eyes wide and take a look. Li Yunmu suddenly threw the god-slaughtering sword into the sky followed by the devil-punishing sword. The two kept spiraling around each other in the sky above the lava hell as if fusing their powers together. The Black Qilin raised its head and glanced at the two unique swords with some astonishment in his gaze. The next moment, however, it attacked the two swords at the same time, whose fusion could be said to be seamless, with its feet. Suddenly, the Black Qilin spat out a ball of energy which seemed capable of devouring everything. Li Yunmu, who was standing not far away and controlling the two swords, was thrown to the ground and coughed out a mouthful of blood. How could his mortal body resist the attack of the Black Qilin? Idiot! Why didn't you transform first? Li Yunmu gasped for breath while watching the Black Qilin's complacent appearance. Cold sweat poured down his forehead. Defeating the enemy in front of him was proving to be somewhat difficult. Li Yunmu used the transformation, and his whole body was covered by a metal suit. With it, he might be able to withstand the attacks of the Black Qilin and give some more time to the two swords to match harmoniously. The Black Qilin paid more attention to the two swords spiraling in the sky then, and its target changed from Li Yunmu to the two swords high above them. Seeing that the Black Qilin had discovered his goal, Li Yunmu promptly used his own body to obstruct him. "I won't allow you to destroy the harmony of the two swords." Li Yunmu punched the Black Qilin's body, but it was the same as scratching an itch for the beast. It ruthlessly struck Li Yunmu with its head and sent him flying away. If it were not for Li Yunmu steadying himself in the air, he would have fallen into the lava hell and died right there and then. Li Yunmu took a deep breath and thought inwardly, its strength is really formidable. By the time Li Yunmu obstructed the Black Qilin for the second time, cracks had already appeared on the metal suit. Its defensive strength wasn't much in front of the divine beast. Li Yunmu took a deep breath, then rushed forth once more. Instead of relying only on brute force, he began to fight more smartly to make time for the two swords. Once they matched harmoniously, the Black Qilin would find it difficult to escape death. Li Yunmu used his mind to grab the two horns of the Black Qilin and howled, "Today, I will defeat you. This senior isn't someone you can defeat. Get lost." With another attack, Li Yunmu toppled to the ground. Then, the Black Qilin used its hooves to completely shatter the metal suit on his body. Pu.